The wind howled like a wild beast outside the metal walls of Ethan's cabin. Rain crashed down from the black sky. The colony streetlights flickered as a powerful storm moved across the edge of Outpost 17. Most homes were locked tight. Windows sealed. No one dared step outside. Inside, Ethan sat alone near the heater. He was a repairman used to quiet. He didn't talk much to others. People in the colony avoided humans anyway. But he didn't mind. The silence was better than lies. He took a sip of warm tea and leaned back when, knock. The sound was soft. So soft he thought it might be the wind. Knock, knock. There it was again. Faint. Weak. Ethan stood up, heart thudding. No one should be outside in this storm. Not now. He walked to the door and opened a small view panel. At first, he saw nothing but rain. Then, movement, something small. A figure. He pulled the door open and his breath caught. There stood a girl, an alien girl. She was soaking wet, clothes torn, arms wrapped around her thin body. Her skin was pale lavender, and her long hair stuck to her face. She didn't speak. She only looked up at him with wide, glowing eyes, filled with fear and cold. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Ethan stared for a moment, unsure. He had seen many things out here, but never this. She was barefoot, bruised, shaking. Without thinking, he stepped aside. "Come in." She looked unsure. He nodded, holding the door wider. "You'll freeze to death out there." She took a step, then another, then collapsed forward. Ethan caught her just in time. He laid her on the couch and wrapped her in a dry blanket. Her hands were like ice. She didn't resist, just looked at him with those eyes that said everything without a single word. He placed a heater close and brought her a cup of warm broth. She sniffed it first, then drank slowly as if it were the first real food in days. He knelt beside her. "Can you understand me?" She didn't answer, but her eyes softened. He spoke slower. "Name?" She lowered her gaze, then shook her head weakly. "No name?" he asked softly. A pause. Then she whispered something, voice cracked and dry. "Riva." Ethan smiled gently. "Riva, that's your name?" She gave the smallest nod. Thunder cracked above the roof. Riva flinched and curled tighter into the blanket. Ethan watched her. There was more to her story. That was clear. She hadn't just gotten lost. Someone had hurt her. Badly. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. Instead, he placed a folded towel beside her and turned toward the kitchen. "You stay warm. I'll find you some dry clothes." She didn't answer, but her eyes followed him, like a stray animal that wasn't sure if it had found safety or just another kind of trap. Later that night, Ethan sat by the window while Riva slept on the couch. Her breathing was shallow but calm. Every once in a while, her fingers twitched like she was used to being grabbed in her sleep. He stared at the rain and thought of what he had done, sheltering an unknown alien girl in the middle of a storm. He didn't even know if she was wanted, dangerous, or sick. But none of that mattered, because when he opened that door, he saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen in a long time. Desperation. She had nothing. No home, no family, not even shoes. And still, she had knocked. As the storm raged outside, Ethan whispered to himself, "Whatever your story is, Riva, you're safe here now." He didn't know that others were already searching for her. He didn't know she had escaped something far darker than the storm. But in that moment, one thing was clear. She had knocked on the right door, and someone had finally opened it. The storm had passed, but the cold stayed behind. Thin fog curled between the colony's metal streets like it refused to leave. Ethan stepped outside early, locking his door gently behind him. Inside, Riva still slept, wrapped tightly in blankets, breathing softly. He had questions, but first, he needed answers and food. The marketplace wasn't far. The early vendors had begun setting up. The scent of oil, spice, and recycled water filled the air. Ethan moved from stall to stall collecting supplies, bread, nutrient pouches, a canister of purified water. But the moment he stepped up to a produce stand, the vendor, a tall, scaled alien with 6 blinking eyes, stared at him coldly. "You're the one who took her in." Ethan paused. "Her?" The vendor scoffed. "The girl, don't play dumb. I didn't know you were watching. Everyone saw her knock. We just didn't open the door." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Why not?" The alien leaned closer. "Because she's no one's problem. That thing brings trouble. She was thrown out for a reason." "She's not a thing," Ethan replied sharply. "She has a name. Riva." "She has scars, too," the vendor said. "And they don't come from accidents. If she survived whatever made them, it's only because she was made for worse." Other vendors nearby looked over, listening. One shook his head. "Don't get involved with her. She doesn't belong anywhere." Ethan grabbed his bag and turned away without another word. Back at home, Riva was awake. She sat curled on the couch, eyes staring at the floor. She wore one of Ethan's old shirts. It hung loose on her thin frame, but it was warm and clean. "I brought food," he said softly. She looked up but didn't smile. He handed her a pouch. "Is this okay?" She took it carefully, sniffed it, and began to eat. Ethan sat beside her, not too close. "Riva, do you know where you came from?" She didn't answer. "Was someone hurting you?" Her hands paused. Slowly she nodded. "Do you know why?" She looked at him, then pointed to her chest. She tapped it twice. Ethan frowned. "Your heart?" She nodded. Then she opened her palm and pointed to the scars on her arms. Ethan gently took her hand. "They did that? Because of what's inside you?" Her eyes filled with tears. Not fast ones, slow, steady drops that rolled silently down her cheeks. Ethan didn't push further. He just sat quietly, letting her cry. Sometimes silence was the only kindness left. That evening, someone knocked on the door. Ethan opened it to find a security officer. Tall, armored, alien. "You're harboring an unregistered life form," the officer said flatly. "She's not a life form, she's a person. She's not in the registry, that makes her illegal." "Then register her." "It's not that simple," the officer replied. "She was expelled, banished by her own kind. Why? She's different, designed for something. Maybe a failed prototype. She's dangerous or broken or both." Ethan stared him down. "You're wrong." The officer lowered his voice. "Just be careful, human. Sometimes things are thrown away for a reason." He left. Ethan shut the door and leaned against it. Inside, Riva had heard everything. She sat, motionless, staring at her hands. "I'm not dangerous," she whispered. "I just wanted to feel safe." Ethan walked over slowly. "You are safe," he said. "You're not broken, and you're not going anywhere." She looked at him, eyes wide. "Why?" she asked. "Because someone should have told you this long ago," Ethan said quietly. "You're not no one's problem, you're someone's precious." She covered her face and began to sob. Not because she was scared, but because for the first time in her life, someone chose to keep her. The mornings were different now. Ethan's once quiet home held soft sounds, bare footsteps, the gentle rustle of blankets, the quiet tapping of fingers on the table as Riva tried to copy the letters he wrote down for her. He had started teaching her words. Simple ones. Food, warm, safe. Her voice was faint, as if unused for years, but it carried something stronger than sound. Trust. Still, behind her glowing eyes, something remained locked. Fear, heavy, silent, always hiding just beneath the surface. That afternoon, Ethan returned from the mechanic shop with a surprise, a small drawing tablet. Riva's eyes lit up. She reached for it carefully, like it might break in her hands. "It's for you," he said, "to draw what you can't say." She nodded once, sat down on the floor, and began tracing lines with her finger. At first, simple shapes, circles, stars, the outline of a face. Then something darker. A long hallway. A room with metal walls, chains. A table with straps. A mask with tubes. Ethan watched in silence, kneeling beside her. "That's where they kept you, isn't it?" She didn't speak, but her hand trembled over the image. Then she drew herself, smaller, curled up, wires attached to her arms and neck. And beside her, a figure in a white coat, no face, just cold eyes. She tapped the figure. Then she wrote a word on the screen. "Doctor." Ethan's stomach tightened. "They experimented on you." She nodded once. "Did they build you?" Riva hesitated, then wrote one more word. "Half." "Half." Ethan looked at her, confused. "Half? What?" She pointed to her own chest, then to his arm. "Half alien, half human." His breath caught. "Riva, did they use human DNA in you?" She blinked slowly, then nodded. Ethan leaned back, heart racing. "That's why you don't belong anywhere. The aliens see you as part human, and the humans didn't even know you existed." She looked down. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wrote, "No place, no people." Ethan gently touched her hand. "You have a place now." Her fingers tightened around his. That night, she had her first nightmare in front of him. Ethan woke to the sound of her whimpering, her breath short and fast. He rushed to the couch. Riva's body was shaking. She kicked and cried out words in her language, clawing at the blanket like it was binding her. He knelt beside her. "Riva, you're safe. It's just a dream." She didn't respond, so he did the only thing he could. He held her, softly, carefully, like calming a scared animal. Her body froze at first, then slowly melted into his arms. Her sobs grew quieter, until she whispered one word against his chest. "Safe." The next day, Ethan took her outside for the first time. Just the yard. Nothing crowded. But the moment she stepped past the doorframe, her body stiffened. She scanned every corner, flinched at a passing drone, and moved only when Ethan offered his hand. Neighbors watched from windows. Whispers followed them. "That's her. The hybrid should have stayed hidden." But Ethan didn't care. He knelt beside Riva. "Do you want to go back inside?" She looked at him, then at the sky. Finally, she said softly, "No, not hiding anymore." They stayed outside until sunset. That evening, Riva showed Ethan a new drawing. It was a picture of his house. But this time, inside the door were two small figures, one human, one alien, together, and underneath, she had written, one word in shaky English, "Home." Ethan smiled. "That's exactly what this is." But deep in the shadows of the colony's outer walls, someone else had seen her return, someone with a badge and a memory. He tapped a communicator. "The hybrid has resurfaced, and she's with a human. Confirm visual. We'll send retrieval soon." The voice on the other end was cold. "Alive or broken?" The officer looked once more at the glowing window where Riva sat drawing by the fire. "Doesn't matter. She's not supposed to exist." The wind had picked up again, but this time there was no storm, just a strange tension in the air. Ethan felt it before he even stepped outside. The way the streets fell quiet too fast. The way some of the neighbors turned their heads and shut their doors when they saw him. Something was wrong. Inside his home, Riva was learning to write her name. She sat hunched over the table, tongue peeking out slightly, focused. Every few minutes she'd glance up at the window, nervous, cautious, but still trying. Ethan didn't want to scare her, but he had to be ready. He had just stepped into the alley behind his workshop to collect spare parts when a shadow moved. Behind him, human. The voice was low, firm. Ethan turned slowly. A tall patrol officer stood at the edge of the alley. His armor was matte black. Not colony patrol, off-world enforcement. Dangerous. "You're harboring a biological hazard," the officer said. One that was supposed to be gone. She's not a hazard, Ethan replied. She's a person. She's a project, one that escaped, one that should have been terminated the moment she left containment. Ethan stepped forward. She's done nothing wrong. Wrong, the officer sneered. She exists. That's the crime. Ethan clenched his fists. What do you want? A warning, the officer said. We're coming back. Soon. She's to be collected, alive or broken. I won't give her up. You won't have a choice. Then the officer vanished into the shadows. Ethan returned home, hiding the panic in his chest. Riva looked up the moment he stepped in. You're quiet, she said. I'm thinking. She tilted her head. You're afraid? He nodded slowly. Someone came today, one of the people who made you. Her hands began to shake. He said they're coming back for you. Riva stood up, eyes wide. I'll leave. No, Ethan said. You're not running again. If I stay, they'll hurt you too. He walked over and held her shoulders. We've come too far for that. You're not going back in a cage. She looked down. I don't want to run anymore, but I don't know how to fight. Then we fight together. That night, Ethan unsealed a metal case he hadn't touched in years. Inside were defense tools, old tech from his military days, a pulse shield, a personal jammer, and a small EMP spike. He set them all on the table. Riva watched quietly. I never thought I'd need these again, Ethan said. But I'd use all of them to protect one thing. Riva spoke softly. Me? He nodded. You. She touched his arm. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Ethan took her hand. Then we faced them, side by side. Later, while Riva rested, Ethan sent a message through a secure channel. A contact from long ago. A woman's voice replied. Still breathing, Ethan? Barely, he muttered. You wouldn't call unless it was serious. I need eyes in orbit. I think they're sending a retrieval team. Name, hybrid girl, human alien DNA. Her name's Riva. There was silence on the other end. You just stepped into something bigger than you realize. I know, Ethan said. But I'm not stepping out, the voice replied, cold and clear. They won't just take her. If you bonded with her, they'll wipe you too. Ethan didn't flinch. Let them try. The next morning, Riva was staring at her drawing pad again. She had drawn a picture of Ethan. Beside him was a shadow figure with glowing red eyes and a weapon raised. And beside her, a cage with the word return scratched above it. Ethan sat beside her. You dreamed it again? She nodded. They said I was made to obey, that my feelings were glitches. He placed his hand gently on hers. You feel more than most people I've ever met, she whispered. Do you think I'm real? You're the realest thing in my life. She smiled for the first time in days, and for the first time ever. She believed it. But in orbit above the colony, a ship blinked into existence, cloaked, silent, watching. Inside, officers studied Riva's file. One line flashed across the screen. Termination authorized, subject displayed unauthorized emotional. Bond, and below that, proceed at nightfall. The night was unusually quiet. No wind, no buzzing patrols, not even the usual hum from the colony walls. Ethan stood on the roof of his home holding a pair of old binoculars. He scanned the skies, again and again, but saw nothing. No ships, no lights, no signs. But he could feel it. Something was coming. Inside, Riva sat curled on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest. She was silent, but not sleeping. She hadn't slept since Ethan told her the truth. They were coming back for her, not to take her home, but to erase her existence. That morning, Ethan had done something risky. He ran a blood scan. He'd kept an old med unit from his fieldwork days. It wasn't legal to scan alien DNA without permission, but desperate times broke rules. Riva had agreed. She sat still, eyes closed, as the scanner read her sample. When it beeped, Ethan stepped back to check the results, and froze. Human. Alien. Bio-enhanced and something else. Classified marker detected. Buried deep in her blood was a signature, an encrypted code, and next to it a forgotten name, Project Elysium. Ethan stared at the screen. Project Elysium. I've heard of this. He opened a locked database on his private console. Years ago, during the early human expansion era, rumors had spread of illegal experiments, hybrids bred for peacekeeping, designed to look harmless, engineered to be loyal, meant to blend in. But something had gone wrong. They began forming emotional bonds, disobeying orders, refusing to harm children, questioning commands. The program was shut down. The hybrids were erased, all except one, Riva. She looked up as Ethan returned, face pale. I'm not supposed to be alive, am I? No, he said gently. But that makes your life even more valuable. She touched her chest. This code, they put it in me. But they couldn't take this. She pointed to her heart. Ethan smiled. That's the part they never understood. Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered. Outside, motion sensors beeped. Ethan looked at the screen. 3 figures. Armored. Silent. Moving fast. He jumped up. They're here. Riva stood, trembling. I'll go. If I leave, maybe they won't hurt you. He grabbed her shoulders. No, we face this together. She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan pulled out the small EMP spike he'd prepared and placed it by the door. As the first agent approached, the door burst open. But the EMP flashed, bright and fast. The agent collapsed, suit sparking. The others moved quickly, stepping over their fallen partner. They weren't here to talk. One aimed a dart gun. Riva ducked and Ethan tackled him, yelling, "She's not yours!" The final agent raised a stun baton and struck Ethan in the back. He groaned and dropped to the ground. Subject confirmed. The agent muttered, grabbing Riva's arm, but she didn't scream. She didn't run. She closed her eyes, and the code in her blood woke up. The lights in the room pulsed. Riva's eyes glowed brighter than ever. Her body stiffened, but not from fear. Something was activating. The agent shouted, "Code Spike, she's burning out." But she wasn't. She was awakening. Memories flooded back. Faces of other hybrids, voices that had called her sister, the soft laugh of a human child she once held close. She remembered, and then she screamed, not in pain, but in power. A wave of energy pulsed from her body, shorting out every weapon in the room. The agents fell. Suits fried. Lights shattered. Silence followed. Ethan groaned, crawling to his knees. "Riva?" She turned toward him, glowing softly, trembling. But still, he reached for her hand. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "I stopped being afraid." They sat together on the floor as emergency lights blinked around them. Ethan whispered, "That thing in your blood, it's not just tech. It's memory, connection, maybe even something close to a soul." Riva looked at him, voice soft. "Then why did they throw me away?" "Because they were scared," he said. "You weren't broken, just too human for their control." She gave a weak smile. "You chose me anyway." He held her close. Always. Far above, on the orbiting ship, alarms rang. A single message scrolled across the terminal. Project Elysium, status, awakened, and, beneath it, one chilling update. She is not alone anymore. Riva sat in the corner of the workshop, her eyes blank, her breath shallow. She hadn't spoken since the agents fell, since the power in her blood burst free. Ethan worked quietly nearby, scanning their vitals, binding wounds, resetting defense systems. But every time he looked at her, his chest tightened. She wasn't broken. She was remembering, and sometimes memory hurt more than pain. He knelt beside her. "You're safe now." She looked up slowly. "I didn't mean to hurt them." "You didn't," he said softly. "You defended yourself." She blinked. I felt something unlock, like part of me had been asleep for years. It probably had. Riva stared down at her hands. I saw them again. In my mind. The others. The ones they made like me. You were part of a team? She nodded. We were never given names, just numbers. I was 5. What happened to the others? They stopped coming back from testing. One by one. Her voice cracked. I stopped asking questions. They told me that was better. Safer. Ethan reached out and held her trembling fingers. You don't have to be silent anymore. But silence didn't last long. Across the colony, something shifted. Ships moved overhead. Low, quiet, official. Civilians were ordered indoors. Streets were cleared, not for an emergency, but for a retrieval. Ethan saw it on the newsfeed. High-value experimental asset located. Do not interfere. No name. No face. Just cold words. But he knew they meant Riva. He sealed the doors and activated the jammers. We don't have much time, he said. They're making this official. They're coming with more than soldiers, this time. Who's coming? Riva asked. The ones who built you. He opened a storage chest under the floorboards. Inside, a small orb marked with faded letters, UNT Research Archive. It was encrypted, dangerous, and illegal. Ethan tapped it. I've been saving this for years. It's a backup from an old lab I serviced. I think it's connected to your project. He handed it to her. Riva held the orb gently. It pulsed in her hands, recognizing her. A hologram flickered to life above it. A human woman in a white coat appeared, voice tired. Project Elysium log, day 243. Hybrid 5 shows advanced empathy. Levels. She formed an emotional link with a child during testing. Orders say to erase the bond, but I couldn't do it. The scientist looked off screen. They say love is a glitch in our programming, but if it is, maybe it's the only thing worth keeping. The message ended. Riva whispered. She tried to protect me. Ethan nodded. Someone believed in you before I ever met you. Riva stared at the orb. She was the one who gave me a name, when no one else would. Suddenly the ground shook. Lights flickered. A voice echoed from loudspeakers across the district. This zone is under secure operation. Remain inside. Do not approach windows. Repeat. Ethan moved to the wall console and checked the scan. A large land transport had arrived, military grade. Black armored suits exited. No faces, no names. They weren't here for peace. They were here to erase a mistake. A new voice came through their private channel. It was cold, precise. To the human named Ethan and Hybrid 5, you are ordered to surrender. Failure to comply will result in lethal action. Ethan turned to Riva. You ready? She stood slowly. I don't want to run anymore. I know. I want them to see me. Together, they opened the front door and stepped outside. Dozens of weapons locked on them instantly. Riva raised her hands, not to surrender, but to show them she wasn't afraid. A suited commander stepped forward, helmeted, silent. He removed his mask, and for the first time, Riva gasped. It was the lead architect of Project Elysium, the man who designed her, the man who signed the orders to destroy her. He looked at her with zero emotion. You were meant to serve. You disobeyed. You bonded. I lived, she said softly. That wasn't your purpose. My purpose, she said, stepping forward, isn't yours to decide anymore. Behind her, Ethan activated the holo screen. The message from the old scientist began to play, publicly, broadcasting across all colony frequencies. People watched, they listened, and they saw her not as a weapon, but as a girl who only ever wanted to belong. The architect's voice cracked for the first time. This wasn't supposed to go public. Ethan smiled. Guess the glitch learned how to speak. The soldiers hesitated. Some lowered their weapons, and Riva stepped forward. Free. The soldiers' grip on their weapons loosened. Not because they were ordered to, but because they saw the girl. She didn't stand like a threat. She stood like someone who had nothing left to hide. The truth had already been broadcast across every screen in the colony. The Project Elysium log, the hidden recording of the human scientist who begged to spare her, and Riva, once a number, now had a name, a face, and a voice. She wasn't just alive. She was finally seen. The lead architect clenched his jaw. You were never meant to step outside that lab. Ethan stepped forward. And yet here she is, stronger than any of us. The man scoffed. You think this changes anything? She's still a hybrid, still unregistered, still a glitch in the system. Riva spoke, her voice steady. Then fix your system. The man's lips curled. You think you belong here? You think one human protecting you makes you worthy? Riva didn't answer with words. She reached into her pocket and held up the broken crescent-shaped necklace Ethan had given her. It glowed faintly with warmth. I belong because someone saw me, and didn't look away. A low sound came from the gathered soldiers, one of uncertainty. Then, one soldier removed their helmet. A younger alien, eyes wide. I have a daughter, her age, he said. I'd kill anyone who called her a mistake. The others looked at each other. Doubt spread like light in a dark room. The architect shouted, Stand down is not authorized, but no one moved, except Riva. She stepped closer to him. You made me to feel nothing. But I loved anyway. That's what scares you. You're defective, he hissed. I'm human enough to know I'm not. And for the first time, the architect, designer of the Elysium project lowered his head, not from guilt, from defeat, because he couldn't stop her anymore. Later that evening, the armored convoy left, quietly, without orders fulfilled. Ethan and Riva stood in the doorway of their small home as the dust settled. He looked at her. You did it. No, she said. We did. News traveled fast. Riva wasn't erased, she was embraced. Colonists who once feared her now offered support. Children drew pictures of her. Others with old memories of the Elysium project came forward. Hidden hybrids, secret caretakers, abandoned files, and slowly, laws began to change. But Riva didn't care about headlines. She cared about the home she finally had. She painted the walls. She kept the necklace near her heart. She learned to cook badly and laughed when Ethan pretended to like the food anyway. Sometimes she still had nightmares, but now she had arms to hold her when she woke. One day, as the sun set orange over the colony, Riva sat beside Ethan on the porch. She held the old drawing tablet in her lap. I used to draw cages, she said. Now I only draw doors. What kind, he asked. Open ones. She looked at him. I want to stay. You already are. She hesitated. Forever? Ethan smiled. Forever inside. That night, she slept without fear, and the stars outside blinked gently as if welcoming her home. Not a weapon, not a mistake, but someone finally chosen